So I wasn't planning on doing any kind of video about this whole thing, but I just, with the things that are coming out, I felt like I wanted to make some comments, and I also wanted to. I've been wanting to stop making videos just because I just think I'm kind of boring to listen to. So I've been trying not to just do videos anymore and just type more. I guess maybe write more, but that's also been a task as of late. Anyway, so I just thought I would just do try to do like a really quick video on all of this. Just offer some thoughts of mine. The whole JFK files thing. A lot of it is not surprising, to be honest, and it's also surprising at the same time. It's a fascinating thing. The Israel connection, I didn't see it coming. I will admit that, and I might talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to just, firstly, I wanted to say, it really is no surprise to me that the CIA was involved. Over the last year or so, I've really been learning how evil and just absolutely diabolical the CIA actually is. It was never an entity that was designed to just provide intelligence. It was clearly, it just, when you look at its actual history, it is so obvious the CIA is far more than that. The thing with these people who make these organizations is you can look at the organization itself, and you can almost guarantee yourself, based on the way they name it, they're lying. It's like all the the different names of take for instance in the French Revolution, the Committee of Public Safety. That's what they called themselves, and this Committee of Public Safety was in reality the absolute rulers of France, and at the head of it all was Robespierre, and you couldn't question anything from him or his cohorts. You just couldn't. You'd end up guillotined. That's called public safety. Everything that we're doing is for the safety of the public. These groups are titled this because they actually think you're stupid, and you're gonna believe them when they say things like, "We're just the Central Intelligence Agency. Our job is we just gather intelligence. That's all we do because we're the CIA." It's in the name. It's obvious what we do. Don't look over here. All we're doing is gathering intelligence. And maybe we have been stupid for a while, but I know for myself, all you have to do, you just have to do a little history, and you don't need everything to be able to start connecting the dots. Like again, with the CIA's connection to the JFK assassination. As you do your history, as you start to research into it, and not just the assassination itself, but you have to look outside of that into the broader perspective of things going on in the world at the time, and even before that. When you start putting all those pieces together, you start to go, yeah, everything points back. Every time, whenever I just pull this thread, it leads me right to the CIA. When I pull this thread, hey, look at that, it takes me right to the CIA. Interesting how that works. But the simple fact is the CIA is and has always been its entire purpose. It was formed after the end of World War II. It was during the Cold War. The CIA is nothing more than the United States version of the, I'm gonna make sure I get this right, KGB. I always want to say KJB, but it's the KGB. It's the United States version of the KGB. That's all it is. That's all it ever has been. The entire history of the Cold War, all of it, is a history of two evil governments at war with each other. The United States government and the Russian Soviet government. They're both evil. They always have been. There was maybe a time years and years ago where the United States was a cause for good. It has long since not been that. Just for longer than I've been alive. this whole JFK file stuff, it changes a lot. Um, Again, in ways it didn't surprise me. In ways it did. But this, look, I've been running on this theory of that our government, for longer than we want to admit, has been infiltrated by certain individuals who are not part of the government. And who are these individuals? I just think, I put it this way when I told this to my dad one time. I said, the United States never got rid of the mob. The mob took over the United States. That's really what happened. Um, it's the idea that, and what I mean by that is, when you look at the activities of the United States, it's clandestine black ops stuff that it's been doing for decades and decades and decades, probably 100 years at least. It just stinks of the old mafia. Everything done in secret, covert, manipulating, over here and over there, and taking a little bit from over here secretly and quietly. That's the whole idea. That was kind of the whole idea of the mafia and the mob. It was meant to be a secret society. It became known as organized crime because it was illegal, and so it was a crime. But the way they did it back then, it was just, the mob was everywhere. It was in everything. And back then, it was conspiracy theory to talk about the mob, because they didn't have the kind of access to information that we have today. So today, we know the mob is history, but it's not. The mob is the government. The mob is in control, once again, as it once was a long time ago. It is still in control. But it's far more sinister now. Because back then, the mob was doing its own thing, and it did have a lot of control over a lot of people in all over the world. But the government didn't like that because, the mob wasn't exactly loyal to the government, so the government had to take it out. But in reality, it's almost like the government got too close to the mob, that it got infected with it and became the mob. It's almost like that kind of a thing. So that's really what we have, I think, anyway, is what we have going on here. Just a bunch of criminal people who are very rich, corporate billionaire types. They're in control of everything. They are, when you look at the military-industrial complex, like right here, they are like above that. That's who these people are. So the CIA, KGB, whatever, just two sides of the same coin. The whole purpose of the CIA has been to provoke conflicts all over the globe with the Soviet Union. And here we are today. The Soviet Union is gone. It's been gone for over 30 years now. And the CIA is still here, NATO is still here. Why do these things still exist? Because we still need conflicts. We still need wars. These people need wars because it gets them money. And JFK, I think we're learning, with the whole Bay of Pigs thing, refused to go to war with Cuba. The Cold War was just ready to go hot right there and then. And man, I tell you, man, World War I, big. World War II, even bigger. What would World War III look like? Thank God that the Lord has prevented something like that from happening. And I'm just even more thankful that Trump now is trying to bring peace to Ukraine, as I do think Putin is trying to do as well. I know there's a lot of people who just, again, stuck in the Cold War, just can't get out of it. Just, it'll be 50 years from now, and they're still going to be thinking Reagan, Cold War stuff, just never going to go away. I don't know. I don't know what to do. People just get stuck in the past. They just, you know, they just long for the old days, as it were. You know, it's like people who can't stop listening to '80s music. I mean, just look, there's better music out there. Sorry, look, '80s were fun while it lasted. It's gone. '80s, that was over 30 years ago. Okay, let's move on to something new. But anyways, you know, it's just people who just can't move on, just can't accept that things are different now. They're not what they used to be. Soviet Union's gone. It's never coming back. And there you go. So, but and it's because people can't recognize that they can't actually deal with the actual threats facing us today, which is our own government. I mean, our own government is the new. If you really want to talk about the Soviet Union, our own government is the new. Again, the whole Cold War is just two bad people at war with each other. One of them won and is now taking over the world. That's really what you have going on. I know people don't want to admit that. We don't want to, because we're the United States. We're the good guys. We fought the Soviets. You know, I used to believe stuff like that. I really did. I used to believe in all that kind of. But history has just been showing me it's different. You know, it really has. That we have, our government has blood on its hands. We create the monsters that we go to war with. We do. I mean, Osama bin Laden. Who made Osama bin Laden? We did. We made him. Back during the first Afghan war, when the Soviets were invading Afghanistan, we went in there and we armed a bunch of extremists. One of those was Osama bin Laden. Who was doing all the arming? CIA. The we just gather intelligence crowd. Those people. Don't look over here where we're giving weapons to these people. We're just gathering intelligence. That's all we're doing. You know, you're selling arms to people. No, that's not. No, we just gather intelligence. That's intelligence gathering. Selling arms to people is intelligence gathering. Huh. But that's what the CIA has done. That's what they did. They did that in Ukraine in 2014. They've been doing this for decades. Decades. They've been doing this stuff. And to me, I don't care who's doing it. I don't care if it's the Russians doing it. I don't care if it's the United States doing it. That is evil. And I will stand against evil from wherever it comes from. So right now it's coming from the United States. So I say the United States government is evil. It needs to be purged of this stuff. And that's what I like about what Donald Trump is doing. That's why I'm really glad that Trump is trying to stop this war in Ukraine from escalating, because the military-industrial complex wants war because it gets them money. It destroys lives and it gets them money. But I wanted to say one more quick thing on all of this. One thing that's really interesting to me, and again, a lot of this is just coincidental. It's not like I was trying to find this stuff. For the last several months, I have been digging into World War I and World War II. I've been reading a book like this one right here. It's been leading me on a rabbit trail. It's opened up a Pandora's box. This one right here. Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War by Patrick Buchanan. How Britain lost its empire and the West lost the world. It's about World War I and World War II. How they began. And basically Buchanan's making the point that World War I and World War II were, the typical argument is World War I is all Kaiser Wilhelm II's fault, and World War II is all Hitler's fault. It's just those pesky Germans. It's just always these pesky Germans. And Buchanan makes the case that at the very least, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I would agree. You know, there's this narrative that's out there that like Wilhelm II was just this warmonger, authoritarian, you know, proto-Hitler guy it could not be farther from the truth. I mean, that's just not true at all. Now, of course, Kaiser Wilhelm II had his faults, of course, yes, as do we all. We've all got our faults. But to call him a warmonger who was trying to start a war is one of the most stupidest things you could ever say. I mean, again, nothing could be farther from the truth. There's arguably nobody, no leader in Europe who was more in the open trying to stop the inevitable coming war than Wilhelm II was. He's pleading with his, I think his nephew or his, I forgot exactly the relationship he had with Nicholas II, Emperor of Russia, the Tsar of Russia. But they're related, you know. He's pleading with him to stop mobilization. Just don't, because you do this, you're going to force me to mobilize, and we're going to have a huge, massive war, and I don't want that. He's trying to get Nicholas II to stop mobilizing because he doesn't want a massive war with Russia. He doesn't want war with France. He doesn't want war with Britain. He's when Serbia accepted all but I think 2 of the demands from Austria-Hungary, sorry. When Serbia accepted all but 2 of the main points, the demands from them, Wilhelm was like quick to go, hey, this is great, cool. Hey, we don't got to go to war. They've accepted most of the points. Let's just roll with it and just get this out of the way, and we're good, and no need for war. Like he's like optimistic. That does not sound like a guy who wants war. That sounds like a guy who's just like, that's wishful thinking right there. You know, he's going, hey, this is great. We don't got to start war. You know, Wilhelm II never even started a war his entire reign. So the idea that World War I is just his fault, it's the fault of this madman in Germany who's trying to blow up the world, is ridiculous. It's actually completely ahistorical, and it's based off of propaganda, because especially in Britain, the goal was to use propaganda to paint Wilhelm II as something that he wasn't, to try and get people to go to war, to start a war. It's provocation. That's what war propaganda is. It's supposed to tell your people, hey, we got to fight these guys. They did this with Iraq and Afghanistan. They talk about Operation Iraqi Freedom. They talk about, constantly told you and me. I remember growing up. I was in high school during when the Iraq War was going on, when it first started. But I remember they were always talking about on the news that we have to go to war in Iraq in order to preserve our freedoms. And we're always hearing about soldiers going over there, fighting for our freedoms. And I always remembered in the back of my head, I didn't want to admit this at the time. It took years to finally come to this point. I always remember in the back of my head, I was like, what? But what does Iraq have to do with my freedoms? I mean, I'm trying to figure that one out. But I was just trying to be a good little conservative boy and do what I was told, But of course, nowadays, as you look back and you understand, that was all propaganda. That's all it was. It was all propaganda to try and to convince the American citizens. That's what the governments are supposed to do. You're supposed to try and convince your citizens, hey, we need to go to war, and it's for the greater good. Joseph Goebbels did this in Germany. He was the propaganda, the head of the propaganda, in Hitler's Third Reich. That was his job. Every government does this. The idea that the United States government is immune from this because what? We're the United States? Like, what kind of argument is that? It's ridiculous. We are no better than all of these other countries. The difference now is just we're now on top. The United States government is now on top, and the people that I was talking about, these shadowy people, they have total influence over the United States government. And the CIA is weaponized, all that stuff. But anyways, one of the interesting things that I learned about World War I, apart from what I just told you, that Wilhelm II was not actually a crazy madman out to start wars. Again, that completely False. Look it up. Anyways, but yes, Wilhelm. You'll know that Wilhelm, he did have temper issues. Yes, he absolutely did. He would often scribble on things, but that doesn't mean the guy was just running around just trying to attack people left and right. Just the guy had some anger issues, and that's the way he dealt with it. Anyways, but one of the things that was fascinating that I learned is even though Wilhelm was trying desperately to stop war from breaking out, he wasn't the only one. Um, Tsar Nicholas II also didn't want to go to war with Germany. The French didn't want to go to war. They were like, yeah, they really didn't want to go to war. Britain's leaders didn't want to go to war, except for maybe Churchill. Churchill was kind of like, this is why he's called the Bulldog, because Churchill is just always Churchill was really truly, you might say, the proto embodiment of the military industrial complex. He was just constantly wanting to just start a fight with somebody. In World War II, the Norwegian fiasco that led to Neville Chamberlain's stepping down and Churchill becoming prime minister, that was actually Churchill's fault. That whole thing, that whole fiasco, that entire debacle was all because of Churchill. Churchill was just trying to get the war going, because during that time, World War II, World War II had actually, what people don't seem to realize, like they may not actually know, when war was declared in World War II, there was no engagement with the Allies and Germany for like a year. There was like no serious engagement. There were like a few, submarines and whatever, but that was about it. There was no actual land engagements for like a whole year after war was declared. And the reason being is because Hitler didn't actually want to attack the West. He wasn't really interested in going after the West. He was actually more interested in going east. And two, the Allies themselves really were because they just got through World War I. They're like, we don't want to do this again. The destruction of our people, especially France. They lost a lot of people. Just done with war. But it was Churchill who's trying to get things going. He's trying to start that. He's like, man, this is boring. Let's start something. And he starts this whole, we got to invade Norway, because Hitler, he basically starts claiming that Hitler is going to invade Norway. So we got to beat him to the punch. Now, did he have any evidence for that? From what I can tell, not really. It's just kind of made it up. And that's because of that, Britain basically was prepared to invade a neutral, I had a brain fart, a neutral country. The so-called, the wonderful Britain who were just the good guys in World War II, blah, 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 blah. Well, they were actually going to invade Norway. They were just going to go ahead and just invade Norway and just go, well, we're doing this for their freedom. That's basically what Churchill was saying. We're doing it for their freedom. Well, we have to protect them by invading. That's what we got to do. And Hitler caught wind of this, and that's when Hitler decided to invade, and then ended up taking over Norway. Yeah, so the whole thing backfired on the British, and Neville Chamberlain ends up resigning, and Churchill somehow managed to become prime minister, even though the whole thing was pretty much his fault. So these are those little facts about World War II that people don't really want to talk about, because we have this narrative that we were the good guys. We were the good guys. We did everything right. We did everything we could. And I'm not trying to say the Germans were the good guys. My whole point is everybody sucked. And all of these wars could have been avoided if we had just kept our eyes focused on Christ, and the mission to spread the gospel. I mean, in World War I, Europe was at the height of its power prior to World War I breaking out, and Europe was this center of the world. Christendom was just in complete power during that time. Of course, there was a lot of rusting away at the foundation at that time. But still, it was all these empires in Europe at the time of World War One were all Christian, and they all tried to blow each other up. They had colonies going out all over the place, and then, whether you care about colonization or not, the simple fact is colonization was spreading Christendom all over the world. And then World War One breaks out, all those colonies are gone, now they're all taken over by a bunch of pagans, and here we are today, basically, and all those empires now gone. And that's why Patrick calls this, it has a subtitle, How Britain Lost Its Empire and the West Lost the World. That's kind of one of Patrick Buchanan's points in the book. All right, so get to my point finally here. During the outbreak of World War One, none of the main leaders wanted to go to war. But you know what actually happened? It was the military staff that were stoking the fires of war and ended up going to war. Prime example, because World War One broke out. The reason why World War One broke out is not because of Wilhelm II exclusively. It is because Austro-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia kind of calls itself a protectorate of Serbia and decides to mobilize and prepare to go to war for Serbia against Austro-Hungary. Germany sees that, and Austro-Hungary is Germany's ally. Germany is backing its own ally. And so now that Russia is mobilizing, Germany goes, I have to mobilize now because Russia is mobilizing. And Wilhelm is pleading with Nicholas II to not mobilize, to stop mobilization. Let Austro-Hungary do its thing. Just let it do its thing. And right on the eve of war, Wilhelm II strikes a deal with Nicholas. They basically just, look, tell you what, let's do this. I forgot exactly the details of it, but it was a cool deal. It was so cool that Nicholas went, hey, that's pretty cool. You know what? I think that's a great idea. You know what? Let's let these two deal with the problem. Let's let the two kids in the schoolyard just duke it out for a bit and settle their differences, And we got this cool deal. That's sweet. And Nicholas actually, from what I read, he sends the telegram to stop mobilization. But his military staff do not send the message down the chain. And so mobilization continues nevertheless, and war breaks out. Fascinating, isn't it? And it's that when the whole July crisis was going on, Wilhelm II, he was off on vacation. He had no idea all of this was happening. He left everything in charge of his staff to deal with the crisis while he was going to go and do a little vacation, retired, whatever. He finds out that this thing is escalating crazy by reading a newspaper, going, what the bleep? And he races back to Germany, to Berlin, and try to go, what is going on? I leave you guys to handle this thing, to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. And what did you guys do? His one of his advisors he offered to resign, and Wilhelm's like, heck no, you're not resigning. The quote was, you cooked this broth, you're gonna eat it, basically. That's what Wilhelm said to this guy. I forgot the name of all the names. You can look all these things up. But he's like furious that his staff has not only not handled as well, they've done the complete opposite of what he wanted them to do, which is try to preserve peace. It's just kind of interesting when you look at all the leaders. So the leaders of all these countries, and then you have their staff, the people that are underneath them, the military staff, everything. The leaders are trying to stop war. It's the military that is stoking the fires of war and ultimately actually start war. So it's very interesting when you look at that and you compare that to today, the military-industrial complex. It's almost like there is just this group. Like I'm genuinely tempted at this point to really believe that these people, these shadowy people, were there in World War One. I mean, obviously the ones that were there in World War One are dead now, but this group, this entity, this organization is still there. it's an interesting thing to think about. It really makes me wonder. So, anyways, that 30 minutes to explain all that. I didn't mean to go that long, as I never do. I always say that, but so those are just some of my thoughts as I'm reflecting on a lot of this stuff. I hope it is just helpful. I hope it's just something that may get you to think, you know. And, but I gotta go. Soli Deo Gloria. God bless. Bye.